It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I'm going to be your host for the day. Appreciate you joining with us. Thanks very much. Glad to have you on board. So, we're going to cover a couple of different topics this morning, including the rather unusual but pertinent topic of how our congressional betrayers are the new hit of the Sochi 2014 Olympics. We're also going to touch on the FCC and their need to place monitors in the newsrooms of America. Wow. Did you just hear what I said? Let's understand this. The FCC believes that they need and desire and have the obligation and the right, frankly, to put news monitors in America's newsrooms. They want to do that because they believe that it's required so that they have the opportunity to determine exactly what the media's decision-making process is as they provide you news and information during the course of the day. Hello? Does the word Pravda come to mind? Yeah. You know, it's interesting. A few months ago, I broke a story that made it onto national news coverage through WorldNet Daily about how the United States of America stripped away the prohibition against utilizing propaganda against the American people. And isn't it funny that only a couple of short, scant months later, here we are looking at putting news monitors into the newsrooms of the United States of America? Kind of interesting, huh? These guys just don't stop. There's no limit to the treason and the betrayal and the desire to create a world where they are in absolute dictatorial control of everything you see, hear, read, discuss. I'm just disgusted. Okay. Our third topic. Interestingly enough, I broke the story the other day about the DHS and how they were putting a brand new license plate database to be able to monitor all of America through your license plates. They want to be able to track your travel, so they get your body as well as your mind, as well as where you are physically at, plus all of your electronic communications. Well, they've canceled that. However, they've announced they're going to buy another 704 million rounds of ammunition. I mean, guys, I guess the budget couldn't handle both. Perhaps that was just it. Their argument and their excuse for canceling it was that it was, quote, submitted without the approval of leadership to the bid website where Congressional or where government bids are put out. It's interesting. If you believe that, then I got to tell you, I must actually be the Pope. Not really. All right. Our fourth topic, and this one should come as no surprise, but it certainly is worthy of a discussion, and that is that Kathleen Sebelius and the HHS, excuse me, have determined that they need full access to the entire Twitter feed, including all of its historical data. Wow. Now, this makes total sense to me. So let's give spy capability to the most inept, corrupt, and failure-laden woman and administration within the entire United States government. I mean, what could go wrong, right? I mean, can't you see it all now? Every little agency gets its own little spy headquarters. Ostensibly, Kathleen Sebelius, who's perhaps the second most hated woman in America behind Hillary Clinton for all of the actions and the treasonous actions taken against the nation's best interest, now wants to monitor Twitter for, quote, public health reasons. Seems pretty thin to me. I got to tell you, the path and the word fast and furious is what comes to mind. Or the term fast and furious is what comes to mind. Because what we're talking about here is, for all intents and purposes, nothing more than a blatant attempt by government to expand and expose that which we already know is dangerous for us. Allowing the things that are happening in government to continue to go on reminds me kind of the idea of someone who's playing Russian roulette. So, the picture is this. You got a guy sitting at a table, and he's full of false bravado, and he goes and pops open the cylinder of that revolver, and he slides in a shell casing. And he slams that home, and he pulls the hammer back halfway and just spins that wheel. Bzzz. Then without looking, he cocks it and says, "Watch this." You see, America is playing Russian roulette. We have this false bravado out there that it can't happen here. And we're fooling ourselves. At some point, reality is going to catch up with us. And when it does, there's going to be hell to pay. So let's talk about our first topic this morning, because as I was reading this morning and I was doing my research and some homework on some of these different stories out there, I came across the story of Dirty Harry Reid. Now, Dirty Harry, this guy just kills me. He's actually out there putting out a tweet, and he thinks he's slick with his Twitter feed, right? Of course, the HHS wants to monitor him, too. So he's out there with his Twitter feed, and he posts out a tweet that says, basically, that the Koch brothers are funding constitutional efforts, right? Well, he neglects to mention that the previous day he was at a fundraiser for his own personal aggrandizement and continuation within the Senate at a billionaire's house. Dirty Harry Reid, the king of lies, the king of treason and traitorous actions against his own nation. No other member of the Olympic national team, which I have now labeled called the Congressional Betrayers, has won so many gold medals for treason. But here, even Dirty Harry can top himself. He publicly faults the Koch brothers for supporting pro-Constitution causes, while simultaneously holding a fundraiser at a billionaire's house. He might even have actually had the unmitigated gall to tweet that from that guy's living room. I got to tell you, every time I see Dirty Harry, I want to vomit. Because this is a guy who is the face, the poster boy for corruption and treason. There is no one else in Congress, even exceeding John Boehner, who really epitomizes the team captain for the Congressional Betrayers. Here's a guy who sycophantically jumps on board every program that Obama has, unless it threatens his only other love, the advancement of the Democratic Party. The other day, I talked about the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the treaty that has been negotiated for the past 5 years in secret, the one that the media is not talking to you about. the one that you don't see any discussion about whatsoever, the one that was hidden from congressmen under its negotiation, the one that all of these bankers and brokers and multinational trade representatives are negotiating on the government's behalf, and yet the government itself is prohibited from seeing the contents of this treaty. This is the same Senate members that are going to have to vote on it, right? And the president presented this treaty to the Senate, and Harry Reid quietly put it in his pocket and said, well, we can't really vote on that because, well, we have this election coming up in only about, 8 months, 9 months, and to be honest with you, voting on this treaty right now might be a problem. I'm waiting for the Dirty Harry trick. He's going to slip this in one night at around, 11:45 p.m. No one will have read it. He'll just barely have a quorum, made up all secretly of his favorite little boys and girls. And we may well find ourselves on the wrong end of a sovereignty-stealing treaty. You see, Dirty Harry, this is a guy who has been accused, and I'll say accused, of allegedly, and I do use the word allegedly, cutting real estate deals using his children as fronts and props. He's worth untold millions. And as long as he's been in the Senate, there's no way that a guy like him could have adjudicated that kind of wealth and developed and built and created that level of wealth at $195,000 a year. I mean, he's still got his expenses, right? He's still got to keep up a massive home in Nevada, and he's still got to keep up his beautiful Georgetown mansion. Even though he only works along with the rest of the congressional betrayers, they only practice 25% of the time. So you got to wonder, what is it with Harry Reid? I mean, what does this... He's almost at the end of his life because he's an old codger. He touts himself as this, ex-boxer who's this tough guy. He speaks very softly. But he wields incredible power. And this guy is the king of dirty tricks. I mean, this is the guy that pulled off the nuclear option in the Senate. He's the guy that got Obamacare pushed through with only Democratic votes. For the record, if you don't know, just so you get a handle on Dirty Harry's tricks, here's what he did. Obamacare, because all bills that generate and require spending have to begin in the House, it started as a bill that was originally intended to be a way to help military families pay their mortgages while their fathers and mothers were overseas fighting on behalf of a country that doesn't even practice the democracy we're selling. And then the bill came over, and it was, of course, passed overwhelmingly in the House. Then it came over to the Senate, and Harry Reid took the bill and he opened the capsule, and he poured out all the contents that was intended to support and protect military families and their ability to be able to have their mortgages paid. And he reinserted, he injected Obamacare into that bill. And then, because he knew that if he sent it back to the House as a marked up bill, the House would say, well, what happened to our mortgage payment program? He utilized a dirty little parliamentary Dirty Harry trick. And he got it approved by the Senate alone, because the House had already approved it. And that's how we got stuck with Obamacare. 1/6 of our economy, your rights, your liberties, and your freedoms, all of that was stolen away by the team captain of the Congressional Betrayers Fund. When I look at Dirty Harry, he reminds me of Offal. Offal. You know what that is? That's what you discard when you gut the pig. Harsh? Hope so. There is no human being, perhaps at least in the male side of the fence. With the female side of the fence, it's a pretty close toss-up between taking a look at Hillary and wanting to go, and perhaps Kathleen Sebelius. But Harry, on the male side of the fence, there's just something about this guy that makes me grit my teeth. I really don't like him, in case you haven't figured that out. He is the dirtiest, slimiest, most traitorous, treasonous human being that we have currently in government. At least in the Congressional Betrayers team. We do have another team. That's the Executive Betrayers team. And they're in fairly close competition, but generally in the political Olympics, you see the Executive Betrayers team, they work and play in different sports. Then there's the Judicial Betrayers team. That's a different sport altogether, too. But you see, all of them combined are our submission to Sochi 2014. These people really really turn my stomach. Well, let me put it to you this way. I said the other day that administrative agency employees were, for all intents and purposes, maggots. You know, teeming, crawling, creepy, slimy, slithering. Well, that's kind of an insult to maggots, and I apologize to all maggots in advance. When I think of gutted awful, I have to apologize to that because I've applied the same comparison with Harry. What I don't understand is how these people allow themselves to be tricked. The people in Nevada, and quite frankly, the people in Congress. Harry has done more to destroy the value of the Republican brand than almost anyone I know. And yet he's their self-elected leader. I don't get it. And I'm not sure you do either. What I do know is that if you look up Dirty Harry's little secrets, and perhaps that's his problem, perhaps someone in some government agency, which shall remain nameless, has an enormous file on Harry's dirty little real estate deals. And every once in a while he gets a hand-delivered manila envelope, you know, and he pops it open and he takes a look and he pulls it out and he just peeks at it like a gambler looks at the corner of his card and, oh, they got that. And at the bottom is a little hand-printed note that says, "This is what you're going to do, Harry, or else we'll send this to the New York Times." Oh, sorry, not the New York Times. Let's make that the Wall Street Journal because the New York Times won't, they're not going to publish and print that. Ministry of Propaganda isn't going to do anything that might actually alert their public who they truly owe their allegiance to. The truth. It's funny that the fourth estate, the fourth arm of government, which is the one that's supposed to act as, for all intents and purposes, our predominant watchdog over this government, has decided in their infinite wisdom that they're much better off just playing along. And so Dirty Harry is never exposed for the treasonous dirt that he really is. I'd like to see an expose on Harry. I'd like to see somebody really, some investigative journalist with creativity and a little hard work, elbow grease, and a muscle dig into Harry's background. That would be kind of interesting. Well, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the FCC and how they need to have monitors inside of our newsrooms just to keep everybody honest. You know what I mean? Wow. You're listening to America's Voice. My name is Michael Evans. I'm feeling rather cynical this morning, in case you hadn't noticed. We'll be back in just a minute. When we do return, we're going to touch on that. While we're at it, I'd like you to do our vendors and our sponsors a favor and visit with those folks. I'd like you to go see our friends over at the law offices of Jason Henry if you're in the West Plains area and or anywhere in the state of Missouri and you need help with a criminal or civil case. You can get a hold of him by calling him at 417-256-4100. And if you happen to be on the square and you'd like to visit him, he's at number 10 Court Square. You can also swing by Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, and I would appreciate it if you do so. You can certainly visit those folks at 417-257-1776. Then you can jump over to Wits End Classic Barbershop and get yourself a great haircut for $10. And if you'd like to treat your favorite guy or your husband or your boyfriend or your brother or your father to a great hot lather shave with a straight razor and the hot towel and the whole 9 yards, kind of like the old cowboy movies, then you can go see Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. His last name is Winningham, and he's named it Wits End, which is kind of witty. You can reach him at 417-372-2027, but no appointments are necessary. Just remember he's closed on Mondays, like all barbers. What's up with that? While you're at it, swing by the battery station just off the square on Washington Avenue and do yourself a favor and get yourself into, by the way, for the record, this is the last, I think Monday or Tuesday, they're closing the last co-op order. So make sure that you jump in there. I'll talk about this in the next segment in a moment. But jump in there and make sure that you get your co-op order filled. You can get to the battery station by calling them at 417-257-7799. You can also find them at batterystation.com on the web. In addition to that, make sure that you swing over and see our friends over at Express Mini Marts 1 and 2. One is on the corner of 14 and 63 in what used to be the old Granny's Cafe building, and they have a drive-through there. So make sure that you go. They have the lowest guaranteed prices on cigarettes and the lowest fountain drink prices in the county. Make sure that you swing in there. The second location is right across the street from People's Park in West Plains. That's where the pool is located, and City Pool, and you can go in there and go through their drive-through too. So even in lousy weather, you don't have to get out of your car. Last but not least, make sure that you swing by Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard and get yourself a great lunch on Tuesday nights. Thursday is today, by the way, and they have $5 lunch. And then on Tuesday evenings, it's family night, and kids under 12 eat free. We'll be back in just a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're back on the air. Quick break for commercials. Got to do that, guys, because that's part of the beautiful part of free radio, right? You don't have to pay for it, but you do have to listen to an occasional commercial now. That's just part of the game. But you don't have to pay for it like you do with cable. You don't have to pay for it like you do with the internet. All you got to do is listen. Free. Your cost? A couple seconds of your time for some commercials. Okay, let me remind you, by the way, that Battery Station is the sponsor, before we get into this segment, which is going to be the FCC and why they need monitors in our newsrooms. The Battery Station and America's Voice Now have created a cooperative for bulk food purchasing. And if you're new to this program, or you're new to the idea that we have this program where you can purchase bulk wholesale food at wholesale prices, right? And you can save like up to 50% on your food bill. You can buy a 50-pound bag of oatmeal or rice or wheat or flour or sugar or salt. 25-pound bags too. So you're not, if you're just two people or three people, even if you don't think you need 50 pounds, there's smaller bags available. The idea is that when you buy this food in bulk, you're preparing yourself and your family for long-term emergencies. Even if you're not preparing for a long-term emergency and you think I'm completely off the ball and that there's really no reason to prepare or be a prepper, quote unquote, right? If you don't want to be labeled that way, just think of it this way. You buy a 50-pound bag of rice and you don't have to go visit and pay retail prices at the store for quite a long time. And we all know that the price of food and inflation is eating up the American food dollar, shall we say. And so there's the perfect opportunity for you to take advantage of that. Now, you've only got, I think Kevin told me it was next Monday, if I'm not mistaken, was the final. And so that means that you've only got a couple days now to get in there. And let me just tell you, I'm looking through my NSA personal tracking device here for the text message. And next Wednesday is the order cutoff date. Next Wednesday. So you've got basically 1 week to get your act together. So what you do is you go into Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, and you say, I would like to see the America's Voice co-op catalog, please. You'll be doing two things there. One, you'll be saving yourself a bunch of money with whatever you buy there. And two, you'll be telling them, I heard about your location on America's Voice Now. How cool is that? So you go in and you pull this catalog and you go through it, and it pretty clearly states whether it's a 20-pound or a 50-pound or a 25-pound or a 10-pound bag, and you order what you want. There's no frozen items available. It's all just dry goods. And in a couple of weeks, you'll get a call from Kevin, and he'll say, come and get your stuff. And he means it, because if you've ever been to the Battery Station, he's got that place so cram-packed with stuff that when that food order comes in, he doesn't have a lot of room to store it. I mean, I've walked down the hallway and seen bags stacked all the way up to the ceiling of rice and grain and wheat and sugar and flour and things like that. So we ask that you promptly come get your stuff. He may ask you for a small deposit, but most of the time, I mean, unless you're placing a major order, he's probably just going to ask you to pay some token deposit and make sure that you come and get it in a timely fashion and pay for it then. So don't miss it. Next Wednesday, that's the cutoff. For the record, by the way, today is Thursday, and tonight, if you have an opportunity to, the Campaign for Liberty Libertarian Group is going to be meeting over at Skillets in West Plains. Please make sure that you swing by there if you'd like to hear Sean Rhodes. He's the state representative for that district, or for this district, I should say. And we're going to be questioning Sean and hearing what he has to say about some of the things that are happening in Congress, including updates on the Second Amendment Preservation Act, of course, other bills that are currently in the House. I have some questions related to what's going on with the impeachment of the governor, because that's a bill that's been out there floated. And, well, I'm kind of curious as to who's on board. And then there's some other stuff that we're going to talk about as well. So, if you have an opportunity to, you can go by Skillets tonight, and you can go by at 6, but the meeting actually begins at 7, but that way you can get yourself a quick dinner, and you're good to go. They'll meet in the back room. Okay, so let's get into the FCC, because this really bothers me. What they announced the other day is that the American Center in Law for Law and Justice broke this, actually, and what the Obama administration and the FCC within there, which is another, by the way, unconstitutionally organized, created, and funded federal agency that has no constitutional authority to exist, that same group is planning on doing something called a rulemaking. Now, a rulemaking is interesting because basically what it does is it passes law that you get an opportunity to publicly comment on. And, of course, they don't have the right to pass law. They don't have any authority to pass law, but they do it all the time. I mean, 1,700 pages of new laws in the last Federal Register. Congress didn't pass a single one of them. But anyway, that's a topic for a whole nother show. In this case, what they plan on doing is putting government monitors in newsrooms. Wow. Now, the part about this that really bothers me is that it's interesting that a couple of months ago, I exposed the idea and the concept, and it was picked up by WorldNet Daily and a few others. In fact, WorldNet Daily had a front-page article on it, including the whole video clip, that whole 30-minute segment that I did on the radio. I thought that was pretty cool. Joseph Farah there did that. And that particular video got an awful lot of views. And basically, it said that the title of that was Obama Takes Over the Media, because what he did was, under a Federal Register rule change, kind of coincidental, huh? He determined that they were going to stop honoring and adhering to a rule and a law, which was passed back in 1947, called the Smith-Mundt Act. And what that act did is it barred the United States government from injecting propaganda, and use the word propaganda, into the American news dissertation. In other words, the idea was that propaganda can be so dangerous when in the hands of a tyrannical government, such as the one we currently have, that the idea was that you cannot have a government that can have propagandic access to the media. And so the whole premise is government should stay out of media, because media is supposed to be a watchdog, not a lapdog. Well, their idea is they want to put media monitors. And I mean, does the word Pravda come to mind? I mean, it does to me, right? Do we want every newspaper and every television news organization that's already not on the side of the administration to have a news monitor in there who says, well, listen, I know you want to talk about this story about some scandal breaking or Obamacare's failure or the fact that the NSA is monitoring and spying on Americans again, but what we really want to do is we want to talk about this other story about how successful Obamacare's been and the fact that we signed up 3.3 million people. And, well, isn't that great? That's the story you're going to push. That's the lead story for the day. The FCC says they want to gather, quote, information from television and radio broadcasters to ascertain the process by which stories are selected, station priorities for content production quality and population served, the perceived station bias, the perceived percent of news dedicated to each of the 8 CINs, and perceived responsiveness to underserved populations. Wow! I mean, thank goodness that Obama the tyrant is giving us the blanket opportunity to serve those underserved populations. I mean, there's more news and alternative news media out there in the world today between the internet and television and radio than we've ever had in all of human known history. But Obama's going to race in, and on his steed, which is hardly white, he's going to save the day. And he's going to serve those underserved populations with fair and balanced news. Unbelievable. Just absolutely stunning. Meanwhile, they got their hand caught in the cookie jar not so long ago, where the Department of Justice was violating the Constitution by monitoring the Associated Press's phone records and, I might add, the Fox News guy, what was his name, Rosen, and as if that wasn't bad enough, they wanted to make sure they didn't miss anything. So they monitored the parents' phone records just in case he made a call from mom and dad's house. Well, Wow. What do you guys think of that idea? I mean, shouldn't we allow the FCC to inject a little politics into the politics? I mean, I can just imagine the 2016 presidential election. You know, this negative story about Hillary and her past indiscretions and the Benghazi lead story you guys want to go with, we really don't think that's appropriate. We would rather see something going on here about, like, Kim Kardashian, perhaps. Or maybe this puff piece about how Hillary is really for women. I don't think, for the record, by the way, that there is a bigger misogynist in the woman's category than perhaps Hillary Clinton. But that's a topic for a whole nother day. This proposal is so blatantly abusive of the right of a free press, the right of free speech, because, I mean, I just want you guys to have this mental picture for a minute. Imagine this, that instead of this screen that is over my shoulder here, that's actually an FCC monitor. And just imagine how we would get on. You guys would have like a front row seat to the Thriller in Manila every day. I mean, he and I would be at fisticuffs before, I don't know, 8:15? This formula that they've decided to interject on the American public is fairly interesting. This FCC commissioner has exposed this thing, and here's what he says. The program is, quote, about pressuring media organizations into covering certain stories. Now, this is what the FCC originally tried under a different cover name. That was originally they wanted to do this thing they called the Fairness Doctrine, which is about as Ayn Randian a name as you can conjure up. I mean, if you've ever read Atlas Shrugged, she has the corner on coming up with Orwellian and political doublespeak names, right? And the Fairness Doctrine group from the federal government is the height of irony and what one would typically refer to as an oxymoron. Anyway, here's what he has to say. His name is Pai, P-A-I, Ajit Pai. That's right. The Obama administration has developed a formula of what it believes the free press should cover, and it's going to send government monitors into newsrooms across America to stand over the shoulders. This was not Pai saying this. This was a different. This was Matthew Clark. He says to stand over the shoulders of the press as they make editorial decisions. Now, this is from the ACLJ. It's Matthew Clark who made that statement. I apologize. I don't want to attribute that to Pai because he's actually promoting for it. Here's the problem. America already recognizes that the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda, a.k.a. the mainstream media, has already betrayed us and doesn't do their job as watchdog now. We know that organizations such as MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and sometimes faux news, are often sitting in the lap of this administration. They neglect to cover stories they should, like the TPP. I mean, this is only another trade treaty that's going to turn the sovereignty of America over to international tribunals to rule on the most amazing things. And Fox is dead silent. But moreover, we already know that only about 23% of the country trust television news. So why would we want to lower that even further? I mean, I guess the reality of this whole thing is simply this. We are consistently and continuously seeing pressure and frontal attacks on all sides. There was a guy who is probably the most famous Marine. His name was Chesty Puller. And at one point in time, he was a bulldog. I mean, just the meanest blanker on the planet. And at one point in time, he was out there in the field, and he had his men with him, and he was completely surrounded by the enemy, and he was asked for a situation report. He picked up his radio, and he said, "Sir, we're completely surrounded on all sides. The good news is we can attack in any direction. We have them right where we want them." I gotta love that. That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're surrounded on all sides, and we can attack in any direction. We may not quite have them right where we want them. I think that was a little optimistic. But he did live through that particular event. That's a true story, by the way. And what bothers me about this whole thing is that most of America will never actually know that they're doing this. Because even the mainstream media that's required to be covered by this is not going to talk about it very much. I mean, they had it on Fox the other night, I will admit that. But they really don't have it on most of the other channels. And there was a kind of an interesting story out there the other day about a CNN reporter who was in Venezuela. And he reported that the Venezuelan cops actually confiscated their equipment at gunpoint. I mean, here they were trying to cover this, thing that's going on in Venezuela. And here's what he says. He says, quote, "The men on motorcycles rounded on us, and the next thing I knew, I was staring down the barrel of a chrome-plated 9mm pistol, and 3 armed men then proceeded to rob our crew of all the camera gear and all the transition gear as well." He later learned that they were plainclothes cops. Well, welcome to the future of news. Because, you see, what we already have is a police state. And what we already have is basically a situation where there is no honest media broker left in the nation, except alternative media sites. That's why I encourage you guys to go to places like CNS News. That's Charlie November Sierra News. CNS News. I encourage you to go to places that I ordinarily go and pull up articles all the time. The Free Beacon is a perfect example. The Washington Times, although sometimes they're questionable. Now, I find articles all over the place. But WorldNet Daily, WND.com. These are organizations that are actually doing a pretty good job of telling the truth. But they don't have mainstream status. Breitbart's another good example. Freedom Outpost. It's another good one. The truth is that the cards are stacked against us. And because most of these news organizations are not actually going to go out there and tell the news. I mean, if they really intended to tell the news and tell the truth, then why is it that when Edward Snowden did a half-hour interview a couple of weeks ago, it was blacked out by the entire news media, including Fox News. Sorry. Whoops. Nobody played it. Why is that? I mean, Edward Snowden has got to be one of the biggest stories of the year, if not the biggest. They're also generally not playing this overclassification video that he put out recently. He warned that overclassification of everything, in other words, this goes back to my point that the Obama administration, under them, everything is a secret, right? And that overclassifying information so that everything is a secret is a danger to democracy. Actually, for the record, I disagree with the word danger. At the present moment, we don't have a democracy. We have no republic, and we have no future hope of returning to the guarantee of either of those nouns. Short of a complete replacement of the entire federal government that sends a strong message to state governments that they could fall underneath the same fate, we are doomed to an ever-degrading police state that ends with bloodshed in our streets and a totalitarian destruction of the America that you thought you knew. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real purpose of news media monitors. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how DHS has canceled the license plate database that I guess kind of alerted some of the patriots out there in the country. But simultaneously, they put out a bid for another 700 million rounds. I suspect maybe there was a budget crunch and they just couldn't afford both. Think that might have been it? It's possible. I mean, you never know, right? All right, we're going to take a break. Before we do, I would love for you to make sure that you visit with our sponsors. Please visit the law offices of Jason Henry, number 10 Court Square, 417-256-4100. You can also get a hold of, and by the way, he handles federal cases and state cases. He specializes in gun cases. So if you've got a felon in possession case or some kind of a case that deals with firearms, that's an area of specialty for him. He also does handle some civil work, including automobile personal injury stuff and things like that. And he handles matrimonial and standard DUI and those kinds of cases as well. So if you've gotten yourself into trouble in some way, shape, or form, and of course nowadays most of us are felons before we've tied our shoes for the first time in the morning, you got to go see a guy like Jason Henry. What can I say? 417-256-4100. You can also visit, while you're on the square, Wits End Classic Barbershop. Get yourself a great haircut for $10. He's a nice young man, too, and he's also a really good, patriotic fella. While you're there, you can go visit Sam over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, and make sure that you get in there and get yourself a cigar or any kind of a tobacco product that you're interested in. You can get a hold of him at 417-257-1776. He's got hundreds of cigars, so if you've got a special brand that you like, he can either get it for you. If he doesn't already have it in stock, give him a call, 417-257-1776. Our friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. Today's Thursday, so lunch is $5. Get in there. And Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays, they also have reduced lunch. And then on Thursdays, kids eat free under 12 because it's family night. And they have a nice salad bar and a pizza bar, and they have pasta on there. And they have these delicious things that are basically they are bread with cinnamon and some kind of sugar on top. And, man, those things are, like, deadly. I love them. They'll stop your heart flat, though. Anyway, while you're there in town and you're on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, swing by and see our friends over at Mini Mart Express 1. That's the one that's right across the street from the city pool at People's Park in West Plains. People's Park, I hate that name. It always reminds me of, like, China. Anyway, swing in there to Express Mini Mart 1. They have the lowest prices on cigarettes and fountain drinks, and they have a drive-through, too. If you get a chance, you can go up on your way into or out of the city at 14 and 63, and you can go to Express Mini Mart 2, where they also have alcohol products. And you can get the greatest fountain drinks and the lowest prices on cigarettes in the county. We'll be back in just a minute.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're joining us in the second half of America's Voice Now, right here today. It's Thursday, the 20th of February, and we are going to discuss during this segment how the DHS has canceled their kind of interesting license plate tracking program where they were threatening to monitor the license plates of all Americans. And what was kind of interesting about that was they were doing it under the claim that it was really to follow illegal immigrants. Huh? Don't you think we could stop that by just not issuing them driver's licenses? I mean, let's be candid here. If they didn't have driver's licenses, they probably, I'm not saying none of them would drive cars, but I'm saying that at least those who are trying to live within the framework of the country that they've snuck into would not be driving cars. But I think after a lot of public noise, Homeland Security Secretary, the new secretary, by the way, Jay Johnson, who's another dangerous man, he ordered the cancellation of the plan. And originally this was put out by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, another administrative agency under the federal mantle. The rest are reserved to the states and to the people themselves, if you recall your 10th Amendment. And in this case, they determined that they were going to develop a national license plate tracking system where any representative of law enforcement or any other agency could simply take their, NSA tracking device, right? And they would be able to go up there and go clickety and snap a picture of your plate, and then step back or pull the zoom back and go clickety and get a picture of your vehicle. The idea, of course, was that they'd build this massive database of every license plate in every car in the country eventually. I mean, it'll only take us a little while. And if we combine that with all of the red light cameras that we've got in every city and all of the surveillance equipment we've got at all parking garages and all of these other locations around these vast array of surveillance equipment that we've got deployed around the United States, turning us into, for all intents and purposes, a military police state, then it won't be long before we'll have an entire database of virtually every vehicle on the road in the U.S. Well, a lot of privacy advocates came out and said, whoa, hold on a minute there, cowboy. Well, the truth is that they came out yesterday and said that they were going to cancel the solicitation for a bid. In other words, what happens is they solicit a bid out there on the web, and companies that are interested in providing this service at a government contracted rate would go out there and build this database for them and give them the ability to snap the picture and auto-upload it and so forth and so on. And so they withdrew the bid. And amazingly enough, get this one, they say that, quote, the solicitation, which was posted without the awareness of ICE leadership, has been canceled. You're kidding me. You mean to tell me this is the work of another rogue agent in maybe Cincinnati? Gillian Christensen, who's the ICE spokeswoman, went on to say, while we continue to support a range of technologies to help meet our law enforcement mission, this solicitation will be reviewed to ensure the path forward appropriately meets our operational needs. The next line in the story, and this is in the Washington Post, says, lawmakers reacted with approval. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Lawmakers reacted with approval. You see, if the lawmakers really cared, if they were really doing their job, they would go to ICE and they'd say, since you guys have been given conflicting orders, in other words, you have a mandate to stop all border transgression and to find and detain and deport all of those people that you find here. But the Obama administration and the Department of Justice have overruled that and said, no, we're going to selectively prosecute, and most of these people should just be cut loose. Shh. Shh. Don't say it publicly. We don't want them to know. The truth is, if government was doing its job and Congress was doing its job, they would utilize those same purse strings they brag about all the time to choke the budget and demand that ICE either do their job or fade away. Or be replaced with an agency that might actually do what it's constitutionally required to do. I am really tired. I'm really tired of traitors and liars and political gamesmen. I mean, doesn't anyone really recognize what we're living with for what it really is? I mean, we're not really foolish enough to believe for a moment, right, that ICE didn't know that this particular group was going to be out there floating a bid for the police state. You don't really believe that, do you? Rep. Benny Thompson from Mississippi, he's a Democrat. Kudos to him for having the courage to come out and say this. He said, the fact that the solicitation was posted without knowledge of ICE leadership, which kind of indicates he believes them, or at least he's giving them plausible cover, but highlights a serious management problem within this DHS component that currently does not have a director nominated by the president. So, in a backhanded way, he slapped DHS and then said, but that's because we don't have a director nominated by the president. I give up because it's so apparent to me that the people that are involved in ruling our country have zero integrity, zero honor, zero commitment to their constitutional oath, zero commitment to the benefit of the nation as a whole, that I call for the replacement of each and every single one of them. What I want to see is all of these disparate, patriotic, constitutional organizations and groups. And I'm talking about the Tea Party, and I'm talking about the people on the Convention of the States side, and I'm talking about the people who come from the independent side, and I'm talking about the people who are libertarians and Constitution Party people. And I want all of you to collectively get together and put some resources behind this, i.e. money, and collectively go to the Koch brothers if you need to and ask them for $500 million or whatever it is that you think you need. And let's begin to put together a coalition of people. Now, we need 435 to replace the existing House members, and they have to come from each of the respective districts within the state. And we need 100 to replace the entire Senate. Then we're going to need about 250 to replace those people who are the heads of the administrative agencies that have no constitutional authority to exist. We can't just blink them out of existence. Then we need roughly 1,000 to replace the 9 black-robed knuckleheads who pretend that they actually are the final arbiters of our Constitution, and the remainder to replace all of the federal judges that are currently sitting. No, you don't have to have a law degree. In fact, I would actually suggest that perhaps you shouldn't have one to be a federal judge. Then, we need to have all of those people sign a contract with America that says, if I betray any of the constitutional principles and I vote for any bill that hasn't been approved or read by me, or there is anything that comes before me that doesn't have constitutional foundational existence, or if I refuse to give up my seat at the election we're going to be holding briefly, then in advance you have my resignation letter. And all you have to do is sign and date it. Co-sign and date it. Now, the truth is, there are a lot of really good patriotic people in this nation. I believe that. And I believe that they exist in every county of the 3,000, whatever there is, 3,200 counties in the nation. 3,069 comes to mind, but I could be wrong about that. Roughly 3,000 counties. And the truth is that unless we completely dismantle the treason that is being accomplished day in and day out as the enemy surrounds us, to go back to my earlier Chesty Puller analogy, we don't really have a chance to stop the path that we're headed down. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not recognized it yet for yourself, this path is leading us to an ever-degrading condition of emergency. For the record, I read something not so long ago created by I think his name was Frank Church, but it was the Church Commission on the permanent state of emergency that the United States is in. And we've been in a permanent but unlifted state of emergency since about 1933. And the idea is that with the state of emergency that we currently have now, the president, under a published statement of a declaration of emergency, he doesn't have to declare a new one, he just has to express the fact that there is one, for all intents and purposes becomes a single dictator with a Congress that has at this point been so well trained to do as they're told that you don't even need the paper anymore. All you got to do is shake your hand and they jump right to line. Our nation is falling at an accelerated rate. Have you not noticed the speed, the alacrity, the pressure from every side? Every facet of the diamond has pressure upon it. And when you apply that kind of pressure and you uniformly press on every facet of the diamond, even though it may be the hardest substance known to man, it will eventually break. We're in a declining state of liberty and freedom. And this may be controversial to some. But make no mistake about it, unless we replace everyone in Washington sending a very strong message to our state governments that this will be your fate if you do not live by the constitutional restrictions that we have allocated to you via our power of attorney, then we will shortly see this nation descend into a level of tyranny and repression and oppression that the world has never known. And what we're going to see is an interesting conundrum. The nation that was, for all intents and purposes, known as the most free, liberty-minded nation in all of human history will now become the most oppressive. I don't understand why people don't see it. I mean, I get it. The evidence is circumstantial. But with literal mountains of it, and willful knowledge and intent of the past intentions of the criminal element that's building this disaster, we shouldn't have any concerns whatsoever about what their real intentions are. There's an article out in the New American, and another great website, The New American. And Director of Intelligence Clapper came out the other day, and I published an article about this, in which he claims surprise because, he basically was stating that we probably should have told America what we were doing back in after 9/11, and then we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't be having all of this angst about us spying on America. Well, the truth of the matter is, his mea culpa, if you want to call it that, doesn't really hold water. I mean, Clapper's a known liar. He lied to Congress. He's been lying to us. He's a liar for a living. That's what he does. He's the epitome of the term spook. So I got to wonder how long it took for the drone speechwriters at the NSA to cook up the faux crow that was eaten by him. The truth is, everything the man says, and you can attribute this to guys like Harry Reid, Obama, Nancy Pelosi, John Boehner, Cantor, the whole lot of them. Everybody in the Justice Department, Eric Holder and his minions. It all amounts to this. Capital B, capital S. You can call it what you want, and you can cover it up with a lot of fancy stuff. But I use one word that covers it all. Treason. 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 And unlike Mr. Obama, I'm not going to give you any caveats to that. When I say period, I mean period. I promise I won't go back and try to skate my way out of it later. Our nation cannot afford any more treason. It's time that we did the right thing, America. So I'm calling on all of you organizations out there to put your money where your mouth is. And stop trying to slice it and dice it between this Republican who might be loyal and this one who sounds a little bit more loyal than the last one. And let's just find replacements for the entire whole lot of them. And then send them a very clear message. We have built a standalone, unified, new government of the new constitutional republic of the United States of America. And y'all have 24 hours or less to vacate. Those who are found here after 24 hours will be arrested and held indefinitely until we have determined that your war on terror of us is over. That's how I really feel about it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to tackle the HHS, who now, this is Health and Human Services, headed up by the Kathleen Sebelius. Probably perhaps the most inept and incompetent person in government today. And we're going to cover how they now want to get access to the entire fire hose of Twitter feeds because they need to monitor it for public health purposes. Huh? Yeah. All right. There's the music. We're going to take a break. Please make sure that you visit and support our sponsors. Those guys make sure that we're on the air every day, whether here and streaming or whether on a radio. It costs a bunch of money for us to do this program. It's never, I don't know, we've never been above the line. We're always in the red. I always make it up out of my pocket. We'd love for you to make sure that you're supporting them so at least their efforts do not go in vain. We'll be right back. Hello there. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. We're in our final segment. And if you're just joining us, you missed a great show today. But never fear. We have a listen line that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and hear the last show that we recorded. So if you were to call 415-325-0725 anytime after about 9 o'clock this morning on the 20th of February, you will be able to hear the entire program at your leisure. And if you have a cell phone, or an NSA tracking device, as I like to call them, then you would be able to, with an unlimited phone plan, then you would be able to listen at your leisure through a headset or maybe on speaker. And you'd be able to listen on a home phone, in your car, however you like. Again, it's 415-325-0725. That particular number is given to us by a company by the name of Audio Now, who records every program that we do and makes it available to listeners who want to listen to radio by phone. How cool is that? And they don't charge us a red cent. They don't charge you either. That's really cool. All right. You can also find us and every program that we do on YouTube. You guys have been asking me repeatedly to not place all of the segments into a single 2-hour YouTube video. I get it. Most of us don't have 2 hours to donate or designate to anything. We're all busy running around trying to make sure that we're doing our part to keep our families alive while our lifeblood is sucked out of us and leached out of us by abusive state and federal governments so that they can distribute your money to the best of their ability. Well, so what I've done is I've gone back to the idea where we will place each segment into its own video. And that should make it easier for you guys, especially if you want to forward one on to a friend because one particular segment you thought was valuable to somebody that, you were having a discussion with last week about the same thing. And you say, hey, check out this guy. He's got a good point on this topic. So I'm actually, in a circuitous way, asking you to please share these videos. Because, quite frankly, I know that YouTube is blocking them. And they don't cut them off and censor them, but they block access to them. Because there is no way that I could do a stupid dog trick and get 2 million views on YouTube, but this program, which operates every day, on average, hits around 200. Something's desperately wrong with that picture. I mean, I get it. I'm not a very handsome guy, and so most people are out there, not wanting to look at me, and that's fine. But we put it up on a audio feed as well, and that gets, believe it or not, quite a few listens. So maybe that's it. And I know I'm controversial, and I know that I'm aggressive, and I know that sometimes I'm just plain, flat out mean. It's okay. The truth of the matter is that there's no way that all of those videos, none of them, get more than an average of a few hundred. I mean, there's a couple that have gone up into the few thousand. But for the most part, YouTube does an enormously successful job of blocking access to those videos. So, in a roundabout way, I'm saying, why don't you make it go viral? Send out an email with a link. Invite your friends. Invite your enemies. Invite your church members. Invite the people that you work with. Those people who are in your circle of influence. Do I look like Nixon when I do that? Let me make it perfectly clear. Anyway, please join us on YouTube because the more views it gets, the more it generates. And, these guys have a habit of trying to make sure that we're not really seen. And I know this is radio on video, and that's a little disconcerting to some people. I'm sitting here with these stupid black headphones on, which today, by the way, only one is working, which is why you've seen me kind of a little mentally scrambled. Only one is listening or auditorily producing, and It's a little disconcerting. Anyway, I digress. I know this is a very strange mood for me today. But it's Thursday and the week is almost over. And boy, I can't wait for tomorrow. So, Kathleen Sebelius and the HHS have made an announcement that they want to gain access to full Twitter historical data. Really? Is there any of these tyrannical little Hitlerites, these little Pol Pot mini-me's, these little unconstitutional, no excuse for existence administrative agency heads that doesn't have a power complex, that doesn't want to have their own little personal spy agency, their own personal HQ? This makes total sense to me, of course, because I want to give spy capability to the most inept and corrupt and failure-laden woman in the entire administration. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Kathleen Sebelius, she's right up there with Hillary and Dirty Harry. When I see her picture, I grit my teeth. Because I look at her as a person who lives on blood. The blood of the hardworking average American. And it's not enough that she draws it and drinks it, but this woman actually injects it through an IV. It wasn't bad enough that she was in charge of Health and Human Services, which was already an extra constitutional agency that was far overreaching any authority that it may have even granted itself. But she got a hold of Obamacare and latched onto it like a pit bull. And now we're all stuck with it. The brainchild of her and Dirty Harry. And they're seeking a social media analytic tool that will give the government access to, quote, the full Twitter historical data. They're looking for a future acquisition to provide near real-time social media analysis so that they can monitor public health issues. Let's just think about that for a minute. So, ostensibly, people who are sick are going to take to their Twitter feed and say, I think I've got the HN1 flu virus, got it from my chickens out in the backyard, and I'm not feeling good. You got to be kidding me. There's a whole long laundry list of the requirements for this particular project, including, quote, only a damn fool tyrant-minded individual could come up with this statement. Access to real-time social media posts and access to the full Twitter fire hose. Nothing would please me more than to see Kathleen bite down on that fire hose and one of us be able to flip the switch on. Sickening. And they didn't stop there. They want to go back 5 years. And they need access to multiple account logins. Huh? Real-time alerting. So we can identify when a health crisis strikes Twitter. and the ability to construct lengthy Boolean searches. Wow. You know what a Boolean search is? For those of you that aren't into data, Boolean searches are the ones that are utilizing algorithms like and, or, and if, right? So I want all the people that use Twitter that use the word government and Republican and whatever, or Democrat. If sent from a conservative feed. And then they narrow that down from the billions of Twitter messages out there in the Twitterverse, and they would have themselves a nice little database of dissidents. They also want to be able to search for the physical location of that Twitterer. Now, they assure us that it's only for public health concerns. I mean, you know, we should believe everything that Kathleen tells us because she's been so honest with us in the past, right? But then she interjects, and other emergencies such as Superstorm Sandy. I mean, I had no idea. I thought FEMA was in charge of national emergencies like Superstorm Sandy. I mean, let's be candid, they didn't really do a very good job at that. But since when is Health and Human Services, the lead agency, unconstitutional, extra-constitutional, with no authority to exist, in charge of national emergencies? It goes on to say, in the midst of an event, we want to know when hospitals and or nursing homes are evacuating patients. And they want to find out when there are scenarios of how we would utilize this tool. So let's see. Let's spend a few $1 billion and let's determine what kind of slim, virtually transparent excuses we can give to be able to abuse the public trust one more time with one more massive surveillance spying system. I get it. We'll get Kathleen to step up there and say, we need this to monitor health issues. And Kathleen steps right up and says, we conduct ongoing monitoring of certain public health issues. An increase in the level of discussion on social media could indicate a new development or a concern that's related to that issue. Ugh. I'm tired of people who think we're so flippin' stupid that we would fall for this. When is America going to realize that every one of these incidents, every one of these overreaches and abuses and intrusions, these are border crossings into the sovereignty of freedom and liberty. And this government that we currently have, whether state or federal, is no different than an illegal alien who violates our border. And it's time that America began to look at them that way. You see, our sovereign border is our ability to live free of government oppression and intervention and abuse and misconduct, the stealing and the theft of our resources and our time and our money and our lives. The sovereign world of our ability to exist with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a violation that is tantamount to political rape. Oh, that ought to get me some email. And it is. It's an intrusion. It's an invasion. It is a penetration of our individual sovereignty and our collective sovereignty. Our founders intended for us to be able to pursue our lives in the best that we were capable of with the God-given gifts that we had, or creator-given, or natural-given. I don't care whether you're an atheist or a religious believer or just a philosopher in general. You see, they understood that in order for you to be able to live your highest and best use for your own personal survival and your own personal benefit and that of your immediate family, you had to be able to pursue your life and your liberty in a way that best fit your needs. Not some collective need, not whether or not government approves, not subject to the whims of some would-be tyrant. And what we consistently seem to have is a violation of those borders. I mean, 20 years ago, how often did you feel the press of federal government in your life? How often? 50 years ago, how desperate was the press then? You barely felt it. I mean, we saw it in things like banking and stuff like that, but for all intents and purposes, most of the problems that we had to deal with stemmed within our state governments. But the deluge, the flood of regulations, the tidal wave of limitations and regulations and intrusions and privacy breaches that we've experienced in the past 20 years has completely changed everything about our nation. We've got Clapper who comes out and says, you know, it's all just a misunderstanding between adults. If we'd have just told you guys back in 9/11, right after 9/11, that we were going to monitor everything and all your email and your phone calls, we wouldn't be having this problem today. So you guys should just back off a little bit and understand that it was really just a misunderstanding between consenting adults. The heck it was, Clapper. We would have told you then to get lost. The truth is, every time we allow another violation of our sovereignty, our independence, our self-governance, our self-reliance, and our ability to be in control of our own destiny, we weaken our border. It's under full assault. And, the barbarian is no longer at the gates. They've come through the gates, and they're eating our children. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what the hell America is waiting for. I mean, at some point in time, do you think that they're going to stop raping and pillaging our neighborhoods and our towns and our villages and our cities and our population and our wives and our daughters and our children? And just stand down and put the weapons down and say, okay, everybody, let's start a brand new. What exactly are y'all waiting for? Well, we're waiting for the 2014 election. That's going to really turn things around this time. That's what we heard in 2010. That's what we heard in 2012. That's what we heard in 2008, when we were going to get a fundamental change that was going to benefit everyone. Well, on the news that... Oh, sorry. False accusation. I got to tell you, folks, Sometimes I feel like nobody really wants to hear the truth because that requires they take action. And they're just too doggone chicken to stand up. The tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Those aren't my words. Our founders, who had just come off of a terrible, terrible tyranny, recognized that there's no substitute for an angry, righteous people to stand up and expel and remove and throw off the chains of the tyrant, the rapist, the terrorist, the monster, the murderer. You wouldn't willingly sign yourself up to be a slave. So why is it that you will not sign the paper, but live under the rules of slavery anyway? You can give them access to your Twitter feed. You can give them access to your phone, your email. I can only promise you one thing. That this will end badly for America. The consistent attitude that it's going to get better in the face of overwhelming evidence that it's only getting worse, well, you know, this will end badly for America. No dominating force in history, and I'm going to leave you with this thought. No dominating force in history has ever willingly given back power that it has stolen or relinquished that power after it has stolen it. And Supreme Court Justice Scalia the other day made a statement when asked about the issues on or surrounding the internment camps in World War II. And he made a statement that I'm going to use here as a quote. We know what happens when the dominating force of history and power get a hold of usurped authority. And to quote Scalia, you're kidding yourself if you think that this will not happen again. He was warning us about internment camps, but I think for a guy who parses his words so carefully, he knew exactly what he was saying. He was giving us a warning about more than just internment camps. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Y'all have a great day.